Secretary Abraham, good to see you.
Good to be back.
Thank you so much for joining us. Donald Trump's website vows he will, quote, rescind all job-destroying Obama executive actions. What Obama policies do you believe are stunting the growth of the U.S.?
Well, I think that the focus that the Trump administration will begin with are things like the Keystone pipeline, where the president has the authority to approve that pipeline. There's another pipeline in the Dakota line that could be approved, job-creating opportunities. I think there'll be a reexamination of the Clean Power Plan, which was an EPA ruling that's now stuck in the courts that came out of the Obama EPA that would, if passed, profoundly change the makeup of the power sector and potentially have job implications as well. So I think there's a lot of areas that Trump could act in.
You have to believe that the Keystone pipeline creates, what, lots of jobs?
Yeah,
how many?
Yes, well, thousands along the pipeline and the construction.
40,000
yeah, I mean, it's an infrastructure stimulus that would be a big impact on the economy.
And I feel the point that's rarely made about these type of energy infrastructure created jobs is they're good paying jobs. These aren't the kind of low wage jobs we've seen kind of enter the marketplace under President Obama. These can pay people, you know, upwards to close to 6 figures in some cases. North Dakota is a perfect example of seeing the per capita income shoot up because of fracking, for example. But that brings me to my question, Mr. Secretary, and great to see you, by the way. How big is the potential for the energy economy alone to grow the American economy, which has been stuck in 1.5%?
Well, I think over the last 5 to 10 years, much of the growth and much of the impetus for momentum in the economy has come out of the energy sector. Now, as oil prices have declined, we've seen some of that recede. But certainly there's a chance that with these kinds of investments to get the momentum started again. And I think the Trump administration will try to do that.
So isn't it the case that this argument is often falsely characterized as a choice between jobs and climate? Isn't it right that a lot of the regulation that the administration, the Obama administration, put in on allegedly for climate hasn't even delivered on that level? It's hurt jobs, but it hasn't helped with climate. That's right.
Well, one area, you know, that gets a lot of this attention is the renewable fuel standard, the ethanol standard, and whether or not it actually has a net positive or negative impact on carbon emissions. Many environmental groups now find themselves rethinking whether or not that's the way to go. And so there will be, I'm sure, a cost-benefit analysis that takes that into account as we go forward.
What's your thought about what the Saudis are doing right now? There's all this conversation about whether or not they are, in fact, going to agree to a production cut going into an OPEC meeting. What do you think the priorities are, and how does that impact America?
Well, as has been the case for the last 2 years, I'm skeptical about whether they'll come out of this meeting with a real deal. I mean, every time they talk about having either a freeze or a cut or whatever, they don't quite get to the finish line, and they talk about, well, we've made great progress. So the thing to watch is whether they actually have a cut or freeze with real numbers attributed to real countries, or if it's more talk to try to keep prices stabilized by jawboning rather than by real action.
If the U.S. starts drilling more, we got the Keystone pipeline, if that happens as well, does that send oil prices lower because we have more supply on the market, you think?
Well, as the production increases around the globe, the market becomes oversupplied. The real key, though, is demand. And with a soft economy in the U.S. that hasn't grown that rapidly, and in Europe, we haven't had demand rising at the level that we would like. And if we could stimulate the economy, have real job growth and real overall economic growth, the demand would start going up, and that supply would no longer be too great. In fact, you'd start to see prices adjust to the greater demand.
So let's talk about the cabinet, because America is anxiously awaiting what we're going to hear from President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. Possible candidates for Energy Secretary include Continental Resources Chief Executive Harold Hamm, Congressman Kevin Cramer, and former Texas Governor Rick Perry. Secretary Abraham, tell us the qualifications that you think are required for this job and your sense of who, I know you don't want to speculate on who might get it, but what does the job require?
Well, it's a very diverse department because it was pulled together in 1977 from a number of pre-existing agencies. So part of the job is what we think of, oil and gas and research into these areas. But it also is the home of the national laboratories. It's also the agency that oversees our nuclear stockpile and maintains the security of that stockpile and its readiness. It's also the agency that handles non-proliferation work, around the globe to try to protect the world from a nuclear accident. And so it's a job that requires really a lot of diverse skill sets. No one person is going to have strength in all those areas, but I think some of the candidates being mentioned certainly could do the job well.
What's the sort of orthodoxy within the department, in the bureaucracy itself? Are they extremely the climate change agenda, or more open to a different approach?
Well, you know, that's a good question. And what I discovered when I arrived there in 2001 was that after 8 years of the Clinton administration, a number of the areas, the nuclear energy division, the fossil energy division, who had been ignored or decreased in size during the previous 8 years, welcomed a new administration. And that probably is where you're going to see it now. You're going to see some areas that feel they'll get more attention, and the people working there will be happy about it. You'll have others who will feel that maybe their priorities will be diminished. They may not be happy about it, but I suspect that as a department, they will pull together. And I had great camaraderie with the career people that worked in the department across the board. They're very able professionals, and I think they'll do the job regardless of who the president or the secretary might be.
We were looking at those pictures of a huge oil find in Texas. What's your take on that?
Well, the Permian Basin, which I think is where this new find is, you know, is the route, really, the principal route for the United States to increase its energy independence. And the Permian's already our greatest long-term producer. This is you know, further evidence that that's where the U.S. oil world is going to be centered, and the companies operating there are going to do very well.
Interesting, because we hear about shale so much in other parts of the country. You think it's going to be here?
Well, the Permian is, you know, probably the lowest cost area for shale production in the United States, and it's also, as we're discovering, perhaps the richest in terms of total mineral deposits.
We talk a lot about energy independence based on our resources. I don't think we talk enough about American energy dominance. I do think at some point, if we change some of our policy and allow, for example, the importation of liquefied natural gas into the global marketplace, we could actually dominate the world energy
On the
market.
other side, do you ever hear people talk about anything even close to that? It's more about environmental justice and almost environmental power, or environmental issues. Sometimes it seems give people on the left the control to do whatever they want, because otherwise you hate the environment.
Well, the interesting thing, when I was secretary, the fuel of the future that was embraced by the environmental movement and others was natural gas. The price of it was increasing, so therefore there wasn't that much development going on. But people said, boy, if we could only be more gas focused in our energy mix, that'd be great, because natural gas emits just half the carbon that coal does. Now that we have a lot of natural gas and it's cheap, suddenly it's become unpopular. And pipelines aren't popular, fracking's not popular. So I think you're right in the sense that there's always a new cause for some of these groups. But the truth is, our natural gas deposits and these new deposits in Texas are going to give the United States a lot of leverage in the world market.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about to become real popular once again.
I think
Secretary, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.